Now, in a GB News exclusive, the full extent of Britain's grooming gangs has been uncovered.
Well, our reporter Charlie Peters is in the studio to tell us more. Morning, Charlie.
Good morning, Ellie. Good morning, Eamon. Well, in January, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said that the government would launch a 3-month rapid audit led by Baroness Louise Casey to assess the extent of this country's grooming gangs scandal. Well, GB News has teamed up with some grassroots researchers from Crime Spotlight UK, and we have done our own research. We've compiled our own dossier, and here it is. The map of the United Kingdom with this grooming gangs scandal. You show that this is truly a national scandal. Indeed, the map's so large we can't even fit in Plymouth in the bottom, where we have found over 50 different towns and cities with some 500 convictions for this sort of abuse, starting from 2007 and moving up until last year. And if you see the intensity of most of these convictions and most activity is happening in the North and Northwest, with Birmingham, London, Oxfordshire and the West Midlands also coming through. Now, if we move further up into the north of England, you see that absolute intensity of this crisis here, with some suspected gang activity moving into the edges of West Yorkshire, and a particular focus around Batley, around Dewsbury and Bradford, and also into Huddersfield. And then there's Rotherham on our next slide there, one of the most intense areas for this form of abuse. If you move on, you can show you what this website will show you, the number of convictions per local authority and area. Just 65 in Rotherham, where since 1997 we know that there have been at least 1,510 victims and survivors identified. The vast majority of those will not have achieved justice. And if Rotherham has 65 and the nation has over 500, that's tens of thousands of survivors still waiting for justice. And we've also compiled a network diagram, this analysis showing the extent of the trafficking crisis when we look at this form of abuse. And you can show that these are not isolated towns and cities dealing with this crisis, but these are interlinked, organised criminal gangs engaging in some of the most heinous abuse. You can see those links stretch nationwide. Some of these accounts have been gathered from government reports, they've been heard in courtrooms, or they've been given by police reports. But many of them have been given directly to GB News in exclusive interviews with survivors, sharing their experiences of trafficking. And then here it is in the north, the sheer intensity of these networks, how they interlink. And there's only just a couple of towns where they've actually had reports in this area, in Rochdale here, but also in Rotherham. You see how these are absolute centres of trafficking for the rest of the north of England. In some cases, we've also seen significant activity of men travelling to abuse or moving children around from the north straight into London. In one case, one survivor being trafficked from Bristol up to Rotherham. And you see those links go right across the northwest. But again, just a handful of these locations has actually had inquiries. So it is an extensive report, Eamon and Ellie. It does show how widespread this crisis is. And it just goes to show that against all of those demands for a full national statutory inquiry, there is so much evidence here of widespread links between abuse gangs, of this being a truly national scandal. And we can also reveal this morning that there are no evidence of any deportations for any grooming gang abusers since 2011, well over a decade since, as far as our records and archives can show, the last abuser was deported. This is a truly national scandal. It continues to rumble on with the controversy around the Minister Lucy Powell last week, and it just goes to show that ahead of Baroness Louise Casey's rapid audit returning, the GB News can show that just how extensive and how heinous this national scandal truly is.
Truly is heinous. Thank you so much, Charlie, for all your hard work on that.
Charlie, can I ask you a question? You may not know the answer to this, but for how many years during what you have been talking about there? For how many years was Keir Starmer the Director of Public Prosecutions? It must have covered some time in charge.
I think about 5 years, and he often says that he was part of the first grooming gang prosecution, that as DPP he led that successful prosecution. But our first prosecution we have here is from 2007. He's never said specifically which case that is, so we're not sure about that. But there is a clear overlap between the Prime Minister's time as DPP and also the many of the convictions that are going on here. Many survivors and those within the law say that during his period as DPP, he did change the rules. The CPS updated its guidance to improve how these prosecutions take place. But even recently, up in Barrow in the northwest, also on our grooming gangs map, compiled with those researchers from Crime Spotlight, that grassroots group, we've heard many accounts of how the CPS has not followed through with prosecutions, even after quite severe and very direct testimony from survivors who still feel as though they're being let down, not just by social services and the police, but also by those in charge of prosecutions.
Charlie, thank you very much indeed. So this is the point, this is the fear here. People hypothesise about why would Labour, why would the government not want a national investigation? And part of the theory that comes up is, well, because your boss was in charge of prosecutions then, and maybe he won't want all that coming out or being regurgitated or talked about or whatever. Your theory is very welcome. Let us know.
Welcome back. It's 6:46. Let's go straight to the Health Secretary now, shall we? Wes Streeting, who joins us on the line. Good to see you this morning, Mr. Streeting. And I know you're here to talk about modernising GP surgeries. Morning. We'll chat about that in just a moment. But I just wanted to talk about your colleague, Lucy Powell, who still remains in her post despite those comments. And just a reminder, if people aren't across it, she was asked if she'd watched that documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs. And these are her comments. She said, "Oh, we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Let's get that dog whistle out now, shall we? Yeah?" Those are the comments that she said in that interview. That kind of attitude allowed these young, white, working-class girls in this country to go undefended and unprotected for decades. It's that kind of attitude that allows those rape gangs to still exist today. Now, you have said that she's a human, that she makes mistakes, but victims have told us here at GB News that they do not accept her apology. So if victims don't accept her apology, why is it good enough for you? Why is it good enough for the government?
Well, look, firstly, the comments that Lucy made were indefensible, and she's not defending those comments. She apologised over the weekend for what she said on the debate programme on Radio 4. But I have seen what victims and victims groups have said since, and I'm really sorry that people have been hurt by what's been said. I know that she is mortified. She deeply regrets what she said. And look, to the heart of the issue, to the substance of the issue, I mean, you are right that, as reports by Alexis J, Louise Casey and others show, there has been a real problem in this area where political correctness meant that lots of victims, especially white working class girls, went unsupported, went without justice, and where these absolutely vile crimes went unaddressed for far too long. And it's one of the reasons why, as a government, we've asked every police force in England and Wales to go back to all of those historic cases where no further action was taken, to just look again at whether that was the right course of action and whether there is more that can be done to bring perpetrators to justice. And it's why, with some of the mechanisms that are in place for victims to go for independent views on their cases to an independent panel, there was a time limit on that previously. We've got rid of that so that all victims have access to that, and there's much more to do. Louise Casey is currently doing an audit of all of the actions. We'll be receiving that shortly and reporting on next steps.